I want to start this video by wishing you all a happy Friday and a happy start to April 2022. It has been 20 years since the final 3DO Army Men game came out. E.T. is now 40 years old, The Godfather hit theaters just 50 years ago, and only 7 years ago, players finally got to touch Shovel Knight, the game, not the character, with their bare hands. It has also been 26 months since I last played Payday 2, which might seem unreasonable or insane given the videos YouTube recommends you. But no, it's not hyperbole, it's the honest truth, and there are a lot of things to consider when talking why that is, though a lot of them are explained by this here paper. But first, let's introduce the format of this video. Hello! Happy start of April. It's a new month. It's a new everything. We're playing some old shit. Today is a doozy. There's this little budget indie game, a very small team. You've probably never heard of it. It's called Payday 2, and it's outsold Super Mario Bros. 3. At its most generous, this game has outsold Mario 3. At the most conservative, it's at the very least outsold Half-Life 1. Which either way is terrifying. So to kind of give you an idea as to how this is gonna go, I've given Dan a list of every weapon that H3VR and Payday 2 have in common. I picked one that isn't that, specifically for this demonstration. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna shoot the gun a little. This thing is awful. Wow. And then I'm gonna give it some ratings. And then we're gonna kind of just start lining up weapons onto these tables. The whole rating system is gonna become a mess. But you're here for watch me shoot some things and talk about some things. And occasionally some insight. So how we're doing this video is interspersed between my discussion of why I stopped covering the game and how I feel about it now, you'll find small pieces of my H3VR weapon tryout series. Here, I fire off as many of the guns from a game as I can in the VR title Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades. The series is entirely improvised, save for a list of weaponry handed to Dan at the start of each video. We'll be cutting to my retrospective and then ending each segment with a few guns at the weapon tryouts table. The full, unabridged video will be made public at a later time, though will be available on Ko-fi the moment this video goes live. That is enough preface. Let's talk about Payday 2. Again, we're still talking about Payday 2. Payday the Heist is a cooperative FPS taking heavy cues from Left 4 Dead by Valve Software. Developed by Overkill and originally published by Sony, players in Payday the Heist were a part of a heist movie breaking into high-security locales and avoiding or confronting conflict as they worked to secure large amounts of money. Your money earned was your experience, and the game was tough as nails. This was the work of the Anderson brothers, Bo and Ulf, who had their last company, Grin, collapsed by a bad deal with Square Enix. They enlisted the help of former Battlefield director David Goldfarb and Starbreeze, a company Bo had just been made CEO of, to produce a bigger budget sequel with the aid of 505 Games. Payday 2 was released on August 13, 2013, and over the next 5 years would take many twists and turns. In its first year, the game clashed quite significantly with Grand Theft Auto Online's Heist mode, which also let 4 players break into bank vaults all across the city, though GTA's more open-ended sandbox nature worked both to its benefit and against it. You had to play the role of a getaway driver, you were at the mercy of traffic and other players, and your lives were limited and all the planning had to be done by its players before you could even begin, which could take hours. Payday 2, by comparison, was a lot more arcadey, letting a player jump into its 11 missions with their friends in a matter of a couple minutes, and be in another one in maybe 20 minutes more, which gave the game a ton of attention in its early days. No doubt helped by big-budget live-action trailers directed by the team behind 500 Miles from Graceland, and starring professional stunt performers and popular television and film actors. The game had a very solid 2013 and 2014, and 2015 got off to a decently good start. The dev team looked exhausted in so many of the game's devlogs, and it was clearly the work of a B team taking on the AAA. And they put on that facade quite well. The issue, though, became 505, who felt the game just wasn't profitable enough, And so in October that year, microtransaction cases known as safes were added, which required a $2.50 key, or drill, to unlock, taking cues from the Manco crates and CSGO's case system. These cases contained skins which could include unique stat bonuses. It's easy to blame the publisher for this bad move, especially when the devs had promised no microtransactions leading up to the game's launch. But Starbreeze had offices in some of the most expensive places on Earth, and Bo Anderson had been acquiring the tools and resources to become a household name in the commercial VR space. So the blame can very easily be split. Still, the move tarnished the game's reputation dramatically, getting attention all over the gaming press and leading to the forum moderators going on strike, letting the page fill with threats and vitriol over the move. And Starbreeze spent the next 9 months on intense damage control, releasing many pieces of DLC for free and incorporating workarounds to make up for this move. 2016 saw Starbreeze buy their way out of the contract with 505 and retire the microtransactions. But without a publisher, the developers were only left to make money from the game and DLC revenue, while their CEO worked against their profits. They were set to have a Walking Dead game out in 2016, but that had been delayed for an indefinite amount of time. Their sister company, Lion Game Lion, was developing a World War II themed co-op title, but that still needed another year and a half in the oven minimum. And without microtransactions, it was only up to the money made from DLC to keep the game afloat, which meant the large sums they'd spent on Ron Perlman couldn't be spent to keep him around to record new lines. They had limited time to record, and they just didn't direct him well. The game's balance was skewed in favor of instant gratification, and it was never possible to predict where the meta was heading. One moment sentries were in, the very next every gun was suppressed, next it was pistols, assault rifles, light machine guns. As 2017 and 2018 rolled on, the game showed clear signs of running on empty. The game's official soundtrack stopped receiving updates, and new music was seemingly sold to the lowest bidder, with a number of composers coming and going, leading to an inconsistent sound throughout the next few years. And one of the game's developers, who previously played one of the main characters and had left the company, had new lines created without his consent by the team simply sentence mixing them.
The fucking video!
Raid World War II, which supposedly cost $8 million and was ostensibly just paid at the heist but in World War II, did not fare well and failed to make a return on their investment, and their Walking Dead game was stuck in development hell thanks to Bo purchasing the rights to a faulty, incomplete game engine just because it had potential for good VR development. The game got events trying to tie back to old plot threads, but went nowhere. Its new characters were designed by fans or were just YouTubers, not a joke, and to incentivize players into starting to play their now long-running game, they were cutting the barriers to entry, making all past content available for $50 versus the couple hundred it used to cost, and giving away 5 million free copies over the course of a month, hoping those new players would convert into DLC bundle purchasers. The mission quality had taken a nosedive. Every combat-centric mission was about hacking 2 boxes on the map and opening some doors, and the game's plot had taken a turn towards American conspiracy, with the revelation that one of its very few named black characters was using a reincarnation machine developed by fallen angels to subjugate the US government, and he was going to do this to turn himself into the nation's eternal despot, a fitting end for one of the 4 ancient and immortal kings of Kataru, who had been in a war with the Nephilim since they bestowed the gift of sentience, of knowledge of good and evil, to mankind at the Garden of Eden. This is still the game about the clowns robbing banks. The final mission ended in November 2018 with an ARG that revealed a secret area and alternate completion method. But no matter what, at the present moment, less than 6% of all players have completed this mission, despite the fact that an any percent run of Payday 2 would only be as long as it takes to complete this one heist, as years of content is jammed together and organized haphazardly on the mission select screen. The quality had dropped off over the last 5 years, and the people who were interested in this David Goliath story of a smaller studio taking on the AAA scene just couldn't bring themselves to care. Especially console players who only got years-old DLC long after the PC release, very sporadically, and they still can't play this final mission today. From November 2018 to the end of May 2019, when I posted Let's Talk About Payday 2, the game got only a couple patches. A mask from a Make-A-Wish visit, a new model for one of the game's contacts, some minor VR improvements, and just one patch in all of 2019, fixing some animation issues, and that was released on the 24th of January 2019. This is a good time to take a break for some H3VR. Check out the chapter select if you want to skip over segments, and if you're just here for H3VR, the full weapon tryout might actually be available now. If so, here's a card, but also check the description. Hey, look at me, I'm Gordon Freeman, yeah! That's really the only reason to use this thing.
So, the regular 1911 is at 59,000.
It's very good that we're starting with the original. That means I should probably take a big drink of water before you say the price.
The Crosskill Guard is valued at 605,000.
Why? There's physically less gone. It's because every time you want to buy one, you like Duke is like, well, I can give you one, but you gotta buy me something first. It's like, what do you want? He's like, I want this 38 Roadster. It's like, why? Why can't you be normal? I've always wanted a bottle of Louis XIV. It's like, Jesus Christ, dude. Anything else I can get you? A throne made of solid gold? Well, my back has been killing me.
Yeah.
That was way more violent than I expected it to be. The way it rolled across the table.
And with that, that brings her daily score up to 34, too short of the 1911's 36, for a total score of 64.
Jeez. Jeez Louise. I actually found, back when I was writing Let's Talk About Payday 2, I found somebody who tried all 5 of the drinks from Icebreaker. They were all shit.
Crosskill Chonky, 1911 A1.
Hey. This seems familiar.
Gee, where have we seen that before?
It's almost like the game fucking launched with one. The only thing I can think is this is supposed to be the Grizzly. The Grizzly was a 1911 clone scaled up for 50 AE, but you could get a conversion kit to scale it back down to 45 ACP. That's the only thing I can think. Because otherwise, it's just another 1911. So what is there to say? How much is this?
134,000.
That's actually not as bad as I thought, but it's still pretty not good.
It's about 3 times the cost.
Yeah.
No, double and some change.
Yeah. I am compelled to just say, F it. And just have you put in, like, all of the same numbers, but value, and just give it, like, 2 points less. Maybe a point less for practicality and a point less for value. Because I don't know why this game has 2 1911s. It is a mystery and an enigma that I don't think we will ever have an answer for. Just a point less for practicality and a point less for value. So a 67. I don't get it. I love this thing because it really sums up Starbreeze perfectly. They wanted a single action army, so they put a single action army in the game. It is the slowest loading pistol, period. And they did the math to average its DPS out over the course of a heist to be on par with the Bronco. It would need to do, I think it was half as much damage as the Thanatos, which is the game's only anti-material weapon.
I remember the Thanatos.
So you'd have to do like 1,800 damage a shot in order to be DPS on par with the game's other revolvers.
Which is just sad.
So you know what they did? They told people don't use the Peacemaker. That is the official statement from Starbreeze. Don't like it? Don't use it.
Love it.
Which really just sums up the state of the company.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole time we haven't even fanned the hammer. Honestly, it's not worth it to fan the hammer. Like, watch. I find it works way better in the left hand. I'm sorry, I just hit the target. I literally hit the target. Payday 2 was a game I loved playing in high school, and with the 700 hours I'd amassed between 2014 and 2017, I felt I was qualified enough to talk about the parts of the game I love. So I revived a then essentially deceased YouTube channel with less than 50 subscribers to show people how I played the game. Over time, people started taking note of what I was doing, and when CrimeFest 2018 dropped, ending the game, I had set up that I would one day, very soon, stop talking about the game. I had some loose ends to wrap up, but I would move on sometime in 2019. I'd been doing reviews and retrospectives of other games in the interim, and they weren't good. I've unlisted 2 of them as I just have better versions of those videos out now, but the Yonoid 2 videos I'd done caught the attention of that game's development team and got me a personal invite to their Discord. And I was making great strides in learning how to articulate my own views on game design. Coupled with the degree in game development I was pursuing, I felt like I was truly growing beyond the limited pool I felt stuck in. Let's Talk About Payday 2 would be my last video on the game. My magnum opus, and it being a structured retrospective and video essay, would lead people to try out my other videos, which would keep the channel growing. It didn't quite work out. Now, don't get me wrong, the video vastly exceeded my expectations, and it's amassed nearly 1 million views, more than I feel I really deserve. But it wasn't just about one video being popular, it was about leading people to my other content. The first video immediately after I ended coverage of the game was a much too brief discussion of game company logos, and that amassed 2,000 views. The next video was my second most popular ever, but its subject matter, a remake of the Backrooms copy pasta in Minecraft, ended up appealing more to 6-year-olds than the 16+ content I'd been making prior, on account of some factors I could not have foreseen, so it doesn't really count. My series, The Creature from the Backlog, floundered in triple-digit views, but Flash's Final Days racked up 70,000 views and is still a video I am deeply proud of. But after that, views fell to the triple digits, barely spiking above 1,000. A video on published Fortnite books and a shitpost about Portal 2 did, back-to-back even. A video about Bethesda's history in the Terraria chest randomizer series did quite well. And a series of coin game stream highlights did a fair bit better than the bulk of the new stuff, but nothing was getting the views Payday 2 content had gotten. The short, and short-sighted, answer was just to make more Payday 2 videos, but keep in mind that the game had been coming up on a full year without any major patches, any information about the game's future. Overkill had moved on to The Walking Dead, a game that was recalled from sale 3 months after launch and was a multi-million-dollar project with a lot of names attached to it, including the official blessing of Robert Kirkman that it was meant to be the definitive action FPS take on the comic books, and it's gone. Starbreeze employees were the victims of 100-hour work weeks while Bo Anderson took vacations. He was funneling money into Dubai with the intent that he'd be the go-to voice for VR arcades and cafes. And his Star VR headset and VR laser tag hybrid game Storm were vaporware. No surprise that Starbreeze filed for restructuring to prevent a bankruptcy, and Bo Anderson, who had left the company shortly after The Walking Dead released, was being investigated for potential insider trading while he fled the Swedish government. Payday 2, as a result, looked dead in the water. Its player base would dry up over the next year or two, and nothing beside would remain. We wouldn't be here in 2022 discussing the game. It would have become just a burning memory. I wasn't keen on the missions released in 2017 and 2018. They were repetitive and kind of boring. The plot had become trite, and the interplay between 4 players doing their own thing while working towards one common goal and protecting one another had been replaced with this linear slaughterhouse. You pointed your gun down and you never stopped shooting in, save for when you'd reload in an unnaturally fast manner thanks to the ridiculous perk system that was no longer grounded in reality. There wasn't any real incentive to play the game cooperative, as the AI, while stupid, were tanky and could carry bags for you, automating the game quite handily. And sure enough, while I had 3 friends who did play the game, all but one had stopped sometime in that first year, and Dan had no real reason to keep going either by the point the game ended. So we all uninstalled the game and moved on with our lives. There was no way around it. The game had come to a close, and it was time to find my new footing. I'm breaking this chapter here if this is going to be a touchy topic, because it is. If you are sensitive to stories of familial loss and grief, I recommend you skip this chapter with the buttons in the description and move to chapter 4. My father had been diagnosed with a rare and hard to isolate form of cancer in the spring of 2019. Kind of intestinal, kind of lymphatic, and he had retired from his work after 30 years in July. This story is important to Payday 2. I'll get there. A bout of pneumonia he suffered in late September, paired with a cancer that doctors just didn't know how to treat anymore, meant that his days were no doubt limited. I spent every weekend away from campus and home to visit him, and ended every weekend by saying what could have been my last words. He would respond back, but over the weeks his responses became more strained, shorter, more quiet, until on the night of the 20th he simply couldn't say anything anymore and just nodded as I spoke. I returned home once more that Wednesday night, having been told just an hour before that his heart had stopped, and that he had passed. On October 23rd, 2019, at around 11 at night, and just 2 months before what would have been his 56th birthday, my father had died. Thursday, the 24th, was a hard day. The house felt quiet, still, desolate. My worries about upcoming homework or a video for next week were pointless. And I felt directionless. I don't remember much about that day, though it was a lot of people visiting, a lot of old photos being dropped off, and we were up all night working to arrange his funeral. The atmosphere was melancholic, heavy, and I had made the matter known to Twitter and would dedicate my next video to him once I got back on campus to record anything. But then Friday the 25th of October rolled around, and I woke up to a boggling number of YouTube comments and some Twitter mentions, a single DM, and one frantic email, all telling me the same thing. Payday 2's back. At first, it felt like a continuation of the sort of twisted nightmare I felt trapped in. I didn't exactly know how to process these words, and I reread the Winds of Change announcement 3 times before coming to terms with how I felt. I actually didn't care. I had not played the game in almost 5 months. I spent the bulk of 2018 disenchanted with the direction the game was headed, and now less than 48 hours after a draining personal loss, I was being bombarded by people who had apparently missed the point behind my most popular video, and felt that I could be persuaded or perhaps even pressured into returning to cover something I was done with. As you can tell by watching this video, it took a while to crack. I made it back to campus that Sunday. I recorded a very brief Minecraft video to keep my mind off of everything, and that entire weekend comments continued to flood in on YouTube. To be fair, I didn't get nearly as many mentions on Twitter after Friday, and I can only imagine it's because then my most recent tweet was about the loss I had faced. YouTube was left in the dark, and I wasn't sure I wanted to open a video with, "My father's dead and all you want to talk about is Payday," as if I'd go back on my word given the ending of a 90-minute personal retrospective, so instead I released concerning the continuation of Payday 2. In some respects, the video isn't good. I open with an Orson Welles joke that wasn't thought through quite completely, and I focus on the wrong problem, and the actual bulk of my issue with the new content is a footnote. I had finished playing the game in June of that year and had no desire to return, but the video does make one thing very clear. I was done. I had been done for months, and that was the last video specifically about Payday 2 for the foreseeable future. The channel had put Payday 2 on an indefinite hiatus. The video should have been this. I have nothing to add to any of the new content, and I will be focusing exclusively on other games. Let's Talk About Payday 2 is my last scripted video, the post-mortem randomizer, my final improv video, and the Mother of All build randomizer is my last stream of the game, all released by the end of the first week of June 2019. Please don't ask about any more future Payday videos because I'm tired of the game and I wish to move on. Instead, maybe due to grief, I lashed out but also tried offering some additions that would make me interested in new content, even though I had actual little desire to play it even if it was to my specification. It just wasn't going to happen. We're going to read some real shitty comments here, but let's check in on how 2022 Jay Riddick is holding up with the VR guns.
Yeah, the hammered double barrel.
Cool, I got it right here. So I did lie a little bit while you were out. No, give me both. Why can you only take one at a time? Oh, you take a completely different shell. Oh, what did I do? Okay, well, I meant to grab the wells then. Oh, you know what? I totally remember the Alaskan deal, like all of that stuff, because right after Alaskan deal, there was that weird event where it's like, whoa, we're gonna sabotage all of Locke's businesses. He's, for whatever reason, associated with the Diamond Heist building. Here's Diamond Heist again. Mm-hmm. And then the very next mission was Reservoir Dogs. Connor Shaw plays a character in the Diamond Heist remake.
I didn't know that.
You only find them in stealth. Because you have to go find like one of the CEO's like friends or like children, and Connor plays the guy.
Oh.
Good for them. But also, that has to be hell now. You know, Connor Shaw. Queer game reviewer, visual novel author, OnlyFans person. And forever on your list of accomplishments will be, I was in Payday 2.
Yeah.
Which has just the worst fucking fan base I've ever seen. They are so ruthless to Connor.
Yeah. Like, there's only a handful of fan bases I can think of that are that toxic.
I can think of probably more than you can, but it's also I just had not good experiences with online multiplayer.
That's fair.
Or the G3 belt fed, sorry. I goofed that one. It has
We're
HK.
gonna start off with the RPK.
Yep, that's the best place of any to start. It looks, a little familiar. So I don't know why people would use this over the AK or vice versa. They kind of are just, to my eyes, the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
In-game, this is one of the few LMGs with 120 damage, and it's also the one that you get to use at level 0, which I am very appreciative of. And it just automatically makes it like the second best LMG in the game for that reason alone. Plus, its reload animation is also one of the fastest. Its only problems are its stability is god-awful, which you can fix by deploying the bipod. And its accuracy isn't great, which, again, I think you can just fix by deploying the bipod. I know the bipod automatically locks stability to 100. I think it does something with the accuracy as well, I don't know. And there are a lot of places where you can deploy a bipod in that game. If you ever get an opponent to cuff themselves, you can use their back as a surface to fire off of. I don't know how they determine what's a bipod surface and what isn't.
Quality.
It's an AK. You could stick this thing in the microwave for half an hour and it's still gonna shoot. AKs could survive getting run over by a truck, getting buried in the dirt and dug up years later. It can get through college without developing a mental illness. This thing is a beast. That's a 10. Like, for the love of Christ, like, please, like, this is the only gun you should be using at level 0. Like, I would say, oh, you know, you could use the Union, but they nerfed they nerfed the hell out of the F2000. That's great. Let me open with the comment that I think is the perfect summation of the response people had to me not covering the game anymore, and who, double space, cars what you, double space, think and want. Another from the same day, yeah, well, I play the game that made the channel big. That's to easy money. And who could forget, wrong, Payday 2 was the only reason I subbed to you. Or the paragraphs-long breakdown that calculated the view count Payday 2 had brought to the channel versus other games. Or that the Twitter DM I'd received on the 26th had become a thread in which that person calculated the income I might have made off of Payday videos using Social Blade, who at their most generous claimed I was making $5,000 a month on videos, nearly 90% of which were Payday, thus coming to the conclusion that not covering Payday would cost me over $50,000 a year every year. The channel, as of the day I'm writing these words, has only barely made $5,000 in total, and has been monetized since June of 2018. That's almost 4 years. And a side note, Social Blade's estimation of a channel's value is vastly overinflated. Stop pulling that number like it means anything, okay? Okay. I wasn't a creator putting their voice in the crowd and getting noticed. I was a factory of content to these people, and when the factory starts producing something different, you move on and abandon it. That's all I was to the vast amount of my then over 10,000 subscribers. I wasn't E3K Hatena, I wasn't J. Sinclair Riddick. I was just another place to copy Payday builds and then a scapegoat to pin the blame on when you went down. I was noise that chattered on about new DLC or updates. I wasn't a person with opinions and thoughts on game design. I was just a pipe spewing debris into the river, and they were panning for gold. I was only valuable for the vast majority of my viewer base when I talked about one thing, and only one thing, and the rest of me was junk, fat to trim. If they had it their way, I couldn't be me, and every week you would get another 2 different DMR builds video that nobody actually wants in a game that had been long abandoned by over 90% of its player base. In hindsight, the fact that these viewers didn't care about the person on the other side of the screen is obvious. At the time of writing, new videos averaged just 200 views, and you have to go 16 videos down my most viewed over the last 4 weeks to get to one that's not Payday or that Minecraft Backrooms thing. The top 3 most watched playlists in that time span are all Payday. Just 3 of the 20 search results that bring people to the channel are about a different game in that time span, and the only videos that bring people to the channel are Payday 2 videos, usually uploaded by the Russian Badger. I have only seen one of his videos about Halo Reach at the request of Dan, and it didn't bode well for me wanting to watch any of his other stuff. I'll leave it at that. It should come to no surprise that I much prefer a more subdued, more honest form of video production. I'm not here to play a bombastic character that'll yell and rage at video games. I'm not gonna trash mobile games one video and then discuss how groundbreaking Raid Shadow Legends or that one cookie JRPG are the next. I'd rather just be honest, as realistic in my anger and frustration or joy or heartbreak as I can. These videos are an extension of me, not an extrapolation of me. That is an important distinction. Of course, yes, it is true that Payday 2 had made the bulk of the channel's money, but going back to my comments on being genuine, it felt dishonest to fall back on the point of let's talk about Payday 2 and just do more videos about the game. So over the next few months, I had made an attempt to course correct. But before we go over what's happened since then, let's see how our H3VR friends are doing. 3, 2, 1, go! That's a 1 in my book. Whatever if you're aiming at, we can literally shoot the broadside of a barn.
You were so excited to reload that, oh my god.
I can't even hit that. That was the fastest I ever reloaded this, and it was for a visual gag that failed.
All I see is just this absolute rush.
I am like way overshooting my target with the scope. Also, I can't find my target anymore. Okay, we can go ahead and rip that off. Alright, now time to do... I wish there was an easier way to reload this.
You would think that you would just turn it upside down and dump the whole thing.
It's for game balance. I know why they did it the way they did it, but jeepers. And then, you know, we're back killing again. Yeah, because if you could just do this... Like, what about a partial reload then? I know why they did it the way they did. There's not a really good way to partially reload. It's not like there's a speed reloader, but for Christ's sakes, there's got to be an easier way.
Next is the RPG-7.
The Overkill pack. One of the most bewildering DLC they ever did. The Overkill DLC, what are your thoughts on it?
It was kind of a disaster.
That's a good word for that entire event. I like that the only reason we completed it was because at the last moment they added pre-ordering Hotline Miami to the bonus. and people wanted Hotline Miami 2, so of course people pre-ordered Hotline Miami 2. The spring break event was weird, but I think it ultimately paled in comparison to Crime Fest that year. Crime Fest that year was just straight up hell on earth. 2015 was just a weird-ass year for that game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really... It's one of the things I think back to most with the game. I mean, it's an okay game, but the thing I was most interested in was watching this fucking bucking bronco of a video game just jump back and forth between, oh, we can afford all of these cool actors and all of these cool sets. Oh, look, Giancarlo Esposito in live action, and we're directing him super well. And then all of a sudden it became like, hey, we had to hire an SFM animator to do our trailers. Hoxton Housewarming Party was done by a guy who did, like, SFM, like, parody trailers.
Yeah.
Anyways, we gotta whip this. If you've never seen a tryout before on this channel, we whip all of the rocket launchers. We missed, but it's still fun to whip. Times I said I was going to stop making Payday content. This is perhaps my most infamous playlist, just here to chronicle every time I've said those magic words. Starting from the outburst in the previous chapters, Games as a Disservice is my half-hour dissertation on always online titles and live service games, living worlds with constant updates. It's also a Halloween video about ghosts in my apartment, and the ghosts are almost all just reading Payday 2 comments, and discussing a video I ended up not making due to scope creep, but that's irrelevant. In that video, I explained that I burnt myself out on multiplayer cooperative games, playing around 500 hours of Payday 2 just working on making videos about the game, not even playing it for my own enjoyment. In the stream VOD, I've got a feeling it'll all work out. I talk about my own mental health during my grief and come to terms with what had happened. But I end by playing Border Crossing, which I just don't think is all that good. The following stream VOD, It's Like an Everything Bagel, has me play San Martin, and it's there that ultimately the spam comments I had gotten about the game had slowed down. 2 DLCs in, and this one is the only one I heard about a week after its launch. But it's also not that great, mostly kit bashed from other better missions, and this is the last time I played the game, February 2020. It has been 26 months since I last touched Payday 2. The 2 Terraria randomizer episodes were probably the most important videos on the playlist. Talking about a certain something has me discuss the fact that I just don't think their economic model is all that viable, and what the game really needs is a relaunch. It is a bloated mess with more difficulties than it knows what to do with, and the player retention has completely bottomed out. It needs optimization and streamlining. It needs a reason to get older, more casual fans more excited about the game, not just more places for longtime whales to dump money. The very model of a modern Major General, though, is the linchpin for my entire stance on the Winds of Change announcement. It's when I first expressed that I had gotten that outpouring of disgruntled comments about the game coming back so soon after my father's passing. This was the moment that the 2 events became inseparable. There was no way to pull them apart after this. This game and its fandom was going to carry that weight forever, and the only people who knew were myself and anyone who had checked Twitter that day. The only mention of Payday 2 in discussing fake Smash rosters and racing things with Steve is at the end, where I called it the Hotel California of fandom, and once again reiterate that I'd made a 90-minute video explaining I had finished. And then we get to the 15k Q&A, where it all comes to a head. This video you're watching right now and the last 10 minutes of that video are one and the same. Making the content I was making was burning me out and I needed to move on, and over the months, getting comments calling me a dead channel, wishing I had stopped making videos instead of moving on, and telling me I was stupid for not liking the game anymore, I just felt that even humoring this fandom with the idea I would ever cover it again was just inviting back in toxicity my life did not need. I was beyond frustrated, and not to say I didn't have a good reason to be upset, but the world didn't need more fruitless hostility. After the 15k Q&A, I had started working on Fallout in Analysis again, a video I'd been trying to write since 2017. If all had gone well, it would have come out on the day the bombs dropped in 2018, but it didn't go as planned. It would have been what I had uploaded in lieu of Let's Talk About Bethesda, but I just wasn't up to the task yet. Instead, it took 6 full months 4 years later, packed with hours of research and a project file so big I had to break it up into 5 project files, and it still took forever to load. But on October 23rd, 2020, the video came out to about 400 views in its first day. This was the spiritual successor to Let's Talk About Payday 2, a more objective analysis and a review of a franchise, more substantial in length with tons of research and critique. And it didn't make a dent, because it wasn't Payday. This isn't just a generalization. The Payday 2 starter guide, the jacket and John Wick builds, and Let's Talk About Payday 2 all outranked Fallout and analysis on that video's first day. Subscribers almost invariably only watched my Payday content, and new viewers were only recommended my old Payday content, so nothing else could get a word in edgewise. And the last video in the playlist is entirely about that. Rather, what was the last video in the playlist, because this will cap the whole thing off. I felt frustrated. I was working my ass off on things I felt were the culmination of my ability to be a game designer and an analyst, a documentarian, an essayist, and an editor, a storyteller, a producer. But it's the jacket build that people come back to time and time again. But now, we're at a point of contention. Is that the right word? We're coming to a trouble spot. The last update I played was 199.2a, and there have been 24 patches since. That's a lot missing from this video, and so without further delay, more H3VR tryouts.
Next is the Compact 5, or the MP5.
But there
basically your choosing, because it's the A2, A3, SD2, whatever.
Yep. So we have, I want to say by default it comes...
I think by default it's the A2.
A2 with the solid stock? I thought it was the A3 with the collapsing stock.
Okay, no, by default it's the one with the solid stock, not the short one.
What the Interesting. So it can be this. You can get this with the collapsing stock for stealth. If you run it akimbo, you get this one, which has no stock, the MP5K, should you desire. There is a mod that turns it into the MP510. They didn't know what MP5 they wanted, so they decided we're going to have all of them. Alright, so, and away we go. I actually like the sights on the MP5. I believe Raid had the stick mag, actually.
Yeah, of course they did. They just failed at everything else.
Well, they were able to solve the problem Overkill couldn't or wouldn't, which was they could only do one reload animation, so they couldn't do like drum mags for like the Car 4 or anything. Somehow LGL found a way to have one animation for the stick mag and a different one for the drum. But yeah, that, that's a point in Raid World War II's favor. It just needs about 60 more points before it can break even. It was just sold as the wrong thing, made by the wrong studio, not given nearly enough time to be its own thing. And as a result, it's just not worth playing. Oh, there's Sterling, and there's Kurgan, and there's the American.
I genuinely don't remember what the American's name is.
I don't either. There was a fourth one, too. Kurgan was the Russian with the gas mask. Wolfgang!
Yeah. Sterling, Rivet, Wolfgang, Kurgan.
Rivet.
A gangster from Chicago turned raider.
That's just Dallas. You ever have this awful sinking feeling in your chest, like you're about to do something you know you're gonna regret? It feels bittersweet, for sure, to look at this menu again, see these characters, and hear the music. But if we want to make sure this is the final video on the game on this channel and cover any outstanding bases or people who might have missed the memo, this is what must be done. Do I even remember how to make a build? Oh, they added a trench gun? There's a second 1911? I'm sorry, there's an underbarrel shotgun on this pistol? You can dual wield the shotgun pistols? There's 100 goddamn infamies. Okay, if you've ever wondered what it's like for a new player to dive into this game in 2022, That's about as good of a demonstration as I can give. And I have 1,100 hours in this game. There's a lot of stuff, and a lot of it just doesn't get explained, or you're just expected to know what's going on, which if you're a new player, you won't. And then you have to consult a guidebook online made by some depressed 20-something from the suburbs of Chicago. What doesn't help is that this game's UI is still essentially as it was 8.5 years ago, with very slight changes. Menus like these are fine when you have like a few dozen options, but when you get to a few hundred, having something like H3VR's item spawner as of update 100 would have really helped. Here we have a list we can organize and scrub through, or just simply plenty of space to see all of our options. We still get relevant data when we focus on a weapon and we can refine our search as needed, but even in the classic view, we can keep way more info on the screen at a time. In this way, H3's item spawner menu might feel expansive, but navigating your choices is very easy. We have categories aplenty, and weapons are organized in an easy to understand manner. And if you want to organize or narrow your search, you can just click 2 buttons and be on your way to finding exactly what you're after. For that matter, why doesn't Payday 2 offer a compare option? The game's weapons fall into a few narrow archetypes, and the differences between weapons in that subclass can feel insignificant. Why not let us compare those stats easily without having to click between 2? Just pick the one I want, hit compare, and then another one, and then I can see how the base stats stack up, or perhaps see some opportunities for extra bonuses. Like a pop-up telling me that such and such gun might have an optional stock that increases stability more, whereas the one I'm comparing it against has no such option. And why can't I refine my search by looking for, say, select fire rifles with a pickup rate exceeding 2 rounds per pickup? Why can't I organize weapons by a stat like accuracy or pickup rate or reload speed? Why can I see the optimal range of a weapon but not how much ammo it gets back? The only guns that have damage fall off are shotgun. Wait, I'm sorry, they did what? The game still has 7 difficulties, that's no surprise there, I guess. I'm still of the opinion that we probably could trim that number down to like 4. Make hard the new normal, bump overkill down just a little bit and make that the new 2nd difficulty. Keep mayhem and death sentence and you're good. Sure. The game would lose out on like 400 achievements if you did that, as not only does each mission have achievements for each difficulty, but each contact has achievements for completing all of their missions on a certain difficulty as well. But having 7 difficulties makes it hard to tell when you're supposed to play what, and as a result there's really no reason to play stuff like normal or very hard. You can easily start on hard, as its only major difference is the addition of tasers, then jump up to overkill and learn to deal with cloakers and bulldozers, and then from there leap into mayhem and death wish. But honestly, I already have a whole video whinging about the odd choices this game made. Actually, I have 2 of those videos. We're not here for that. I guess it just comes down to the only easy solution being to just start from scratch. Wonder how well that's going to work out. Payday 2 in 2022 feels like a pre-modded game. If you handed this off to someone with no prior experience, I would imagine they would call the following mods. Ethan and Gila Klein as part of the roster, the Joy-Con coloration on Joy, the Boring Company flamethrower, the throwing cards, death sentence and the 1-down modifier, mutators if they find them, holdout if they find that, LMGs having intensely good damage and a pickup rate, and then the game's insanely overinflated spawn rates. And probably Bomb Forest. With all due respect, once you get to Mayhem, the number of enemies on screen and in the map at any time, awkwardly clustered around, just gets stupid, to the point of feeling gross. The breaks you get between assault waves are maybe 10 seconds, and your AI exclaim that they're retreating like 3 times before the SWAT team finally does retreat. Meanwhile, you have the option to wear just the worst coats and gloves I've ever seen, paint your gun in what I can only describe as video card failure colors, and they added a button to buy all assets. The scoundrels. It doesn't really feel like big steps towards a better game. It's tiny incremental additions that just keep stacking up on top of one another. Payday 2 is an accumulation of ideas, not a cohesive product made from them. Almost to the point where you can carbon date exactly when a feature was added based on the effort that went into it, how it works, and how well supported it ended up being. A gun whose mods are based on playing one mission? 2013 to 2014, easily. Little boxes around the map that pop up text and reward mods on collecting enough? Definitely the work of an early dev team who had ambition. Crossover items being added to old missions but just disappearing when you hit F? Hits the same quality marks the game hit in 2018. New patterns being made into gun colors and not skins? Welcome to late 2019, early 2020. So, during the interim between these two retrospectives, Scarface as a character was removed from the game. If you owned his DLC prior to October 1st, 2020, you kept him. But after that, the license for his likeness was revoked, and as a result, he is no longer available to purchase. Meaning that some players will permanently have a weapon, a perk deck, 2 masks, and a character locked behind DLC that no longer exists. I don't have a solution for keeping him despite the lapsed licensing rights, but maybe the point is that filling a game with questionable celebrity likenesses and film crossovers will become a problem eventually. Hardcore Henry sticks around because it's a rather small budget film in the grand scheme of things, and the film's crew actively worked on the game with Overkill. Charlito Copley was a producer on the film and portrays the character of Jimmy, both in-game and in the movie. And the team behind the movie directed the trailer for the DLC. The Bodhi available in-game is an homage to both the original movie and the remake simultaneously, not a hard and fast likeness, and is voiced by Josh Len, who has been the physical actor for Hoxton since his first live-action appearances. Scarface is a big-named film, based on a movie nobody's heard of, based on the guy who got expiration dates put on milk. It's an 80s staple and considered one of the must-watch films aboard the Hollywood pantheon. You're gonna lose the rights to that one eventually. Now, as for why Scarface was here, well, apparently the Coen brothers, the Big Lebowski Coen brothers, not the Garfield Coen brothers, were writing a Scarface film, rumored to be about a cocaine smuggler and dealer who arrives to Los Angeles and sets up shop. The film was canned and the rights moved around in the intervening years, and that's why the Scarface DLC, about a Cuban man who arrives in Florida in the early 80s, is not for sale in Payday 2 anymore. This includes the Little Friend 762 and HK 417 meant to stand in for the M16 and Scarface, and while the Kechnov BYK-1 also has an underbarrel, it sits in a totally different damage tier more comparable to the AMR-16 than the M308. As for the injector, yeah, the entire Kingpin perk deck is just completely toast. There's no getting that anymore, unless you're on console. You can still play and purchase the mission, but Pacino's likeness is a no-go and all of the accoutrements that came with it are gone. With that said though, I do want to touch on a few things that I missed in Let's Talk About Payday 2. First off, Update 13 for Payday 2 reworked stealth so guards could report more crimes and the heisters were more likely to be targeted. This caused 2 problems. One, stealth was so bugged that it was very possible for it to fail if a dead body was spotted on the map, even if said corpse was bagged and moved far from the mission area. Or phantom gunfire would alert the 0 guards on the map, but stealth still breaks. And 2, stealth was so poorly implemented that players other than the host had their detection hitbox centered on their character's face, so crouching and leaning into a wall would let you just go entirely undetected. But there was no way to know if you were doing it right without the host playing spotter, which put them at risk for being seen. It took a large number of tweaks and alterations over the rest of 2013 to actually render the stealth gameplay better than the state it was in when the game launched, but it did eventually get better. Next, this is thanks to a comment from now fellow H3VR content creator Peacemaker from years ago. There was going to be a main menu refresh. It was going to take cues from the style at the time, large rectangles with images in them that bring you to submenus. The general consensus was that it was very mobile gamey, and as such they never actually followed through on this plan. Some vestiges of it reared their head in the inventory screen and the like, but that was it. It never properly saw the light of day. Actually, while we're here, Payday Crime War never saw the light of day. Announced at E3 2016 with a closed beta running in September 2018 before being cancelled in 2019, before being picked up by the publisher of Smurf Magic Match in April of 2021, the game has spent 5 years in development being passed around before it could launch several times. For the record, 5 years is what it took to make Alan Wake, and that was a game plagued by internal politics and infighting, but was also just kind of a big headlining, almost like a Hollywood-style game for the consoles at the time. Payday Crime War is a mobile game, using mostly assets from Payday 2. It has taken 5 years to get to this point. I can only assume that infighting and internal politics are just plaguing the hell out of this game, but I cannot otherwise explain why it takes half a decade to make a mobile game. At least it's not just a slot machine. It's still a slot machine, but it just requires playing some FPS stuff first, which is unfortunately better than most mobile games in 2022 can manage. Another thing that totally slipped my mind was the Steam OS and Linux versions of the game. See, Steam, for their spring 2016 sale, required that the game have a Steam OS version. It was a way to pitch the operating system and their line of Steam machines. Starbreeze, right then and there, announced a Steam OS port just to get into the sale. I haven't played the game on Steam OS for many obvious reasons, but I have heard mixed things. It either ran just like the Windows version or was prone to failure nearly constantly with no in-between. Somehow, the Steam OS release still gets patches, though I assume that most non-Windows installations are Linux running the game via Proton at the moment. Another thing I wished to add here was the VR version. I legitimately forgot there was a VR version, mostly because the Venn diagram between times I played Payday 2 and times I had an HMD only stopped being two separate circles like half an hour ago. Oh my god! I get the VR scene has changed a lot since 2018, but good lord, this is a raw deal. First off, the controls are configured for the Vive wand and nothing else, so I can't map the locomotion controls to the control stick on my Odyssey Plus controller whatsoever. And with no button for any kind of turning or crouching, you gotta physically stand, turn, and contort yourself in the limited space available to maneuver through spaces in this game. Being able to point the gun at an enemy and use the sight is cool. Being able to grab the 4 or even the magazine and rip it out is neat. But everything else here is done by tapping buttons on a utility belt and then just moving a thing onto your person when you're done. Your arm positions sent to other non-VR players. I would say a bespoke VR version is better, but that's just John Wick Chronicles, which was an hour long, still suffered from early consumer VR jank, was developed by the Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric people, bless their hearts, and also is not for sale anymore. So there's that. Just play Pavlov or H3VR or something. Also, from what I gather, this is the Valhalla engine handling VR movement and the like, and then passing that info onto Diesel 2.0 to render it all, which I don't even want to think about. Also, I had an interesting glitch where if I tried to actually screen capture the game, OBS would just freak out. So I had to desktop capture, and the game doesn't have a spectator view, so it's small. You're seeing all the footage I could get. I am so sorry. Even outside VR, the game still doesn't run great. I've gone from a 970M to a 3070, same amount of RAM, slightly faster processor, and a wildly better GPU, and the game still manages like 60 frames on a 75 frame display, or if it does manage 75, it still feels stuttery, like there's some kind of frame buffer masking the poor performance. I don't know if it just comes down to not utilizing the GPU properly, but man, this game really shouldn't run this bad in 2022, especially for a game released in 2013. Anyways, that's all the stuff that didn't make it into the original video that should have, honestly. Let's play some missions. Oh, but first.
So, barrel extension, gadget, magazine, sights, stock. Yeah, spend money to pull the stock out.
How much money to pull the stock out?
12K.
Oh my god. That's the future of smart guns. It's like how you have to, what is it? On the BMWs, it's I think like $200 a month to keep your heated seats. They're a subscription service. That'll be the future of firearms.
Alright, that brings us to a daily of 33 and a total of 63, which is just above the Thompson.
That is a surprise to me. Oh, these sights are hateful. I dropped the magazine somewhere. Oh well. Oh, this is gonna make the table explode. Holy shit. Oh my god. I need to find the Cobra. All the watermelons just fell over. Great. That's clipped into the wood now. Well, on that exciting note, what's next? It feels like a farce to even say, but we must press onwards.
Chris Vector.
We start with the border crossing heist. In this, we venture into Mexico, steal from a hangar, and then fly off. Or stand by a plane and assume it flies off. The mission is honestly just the first day of Big Oil and the ballot box hacking and election day, maybe with some Meltdown or Firestarter Day 1 mixed in if you're feeling generous. Really, the only thing worth mentioning about the mission, other than it being the first heist in a bit over a year from the previous mission, is that it has 2 days, technically, via a cart you ride across the southern border. You don't actually get a results screen, and the pre-planning for the mission is spread across both days at once, rather than having you regroup and decide what you're doing in day 2. This makes the mission a little more of a chore than it ought to be, honestly, as you more or less need to pack double the supplies, so if you don't have an ace deployable, you might find yourself kicked by more unscrupulous players. If you need them anyways, as the game is still relatively easy and difficulties below Death Wish, given the fact that the always buff and never nerf balance patch philosophy lives on through the skeleton crew, and you essentially kind of just grind up your opponents beneath the hail of bullets and regenerate health for it pretty much no matter what. You can tap fire the Garand faster than some of the game's machine guns can fire, for Christ's sake. There's also an infinite meth cook mission available here, literally just cook off but using this map, and with Ian Russell reading shoddy meth instructions off WikiHow for you instead of Simon Vickland. There's really no reason to play this one over Cook Off, or Lab Rats, or White Xmas, or Santa's Workshop, or Prison Nightmare. It's better than Counterfeit, though. The San Martin Bank is our next stop, a south-of-the-border spin on the game's bog-standard bank job. It makes use of a number of padding techniques, almost all of which boil down to, you wait out a timer and leave? I get these holdout portions are a major part of even Left 4 Dead, the progenitor of this FPS subgenre, but it feels patronizing just how often you have to wait here. Given Left 4 Dead never had you waiting more than a minute or two at major moments, maybe 3 or 4 at the mission's climax. No, here 4-minute waits are effectively the norm, and they ultimately just contribute to a higher body count as the game's meta still focuses on high ammo pickup rates and health or armor regeneration, and thus if you play your cards right, you're never in any immediate danger. Unless you go outside where a minimum of 2 turrets and a whole bunch of snipers are waiting for you. It just becomes a waiting game until it decides you can pass. San Martin has us use the beast for the second time in the game's life, and here it's just so underwhelming. Big Bank makes such a spectacle out of the beast, dropping it from the sky in a special mission task and having you drag it across the biggest bank in the game, set to an intense EDM-infused opera as you fight for your life. Here, Bile kind of just drops it on the ground, and you bring it in to a vaguely Latin-inspired club beat, and then just wait. You just watch it go. The spectacle would have been gone regardless by just doing it again, and here it's done again, and this time it's more underwhelming. Honestly, the Brooklyn Bank or Reservoir Dogs vault breaching tactics were so much cooler. The ultimate goal in this mission is to reclaim a Fabergé egg and some treasures and walk out with them. I will at least say that I'm glad both of these missions offer additional loot to take. So much of 2018's run included effectively just linear missions with no side paths or extras to collect at all. You could port White House Heist to Left 4 Dead 2, make all of the timers just a button that alerts the Horde, and nothing would change. I'm gonna take a brief detour from discussing the missions. There's some other things afoot at the moment, like gun colors. They're exactly what they sound like. They're like skins, but they're universal across all the game's weapons, and they come with the ability to recolor certain segments of a gun, but only in predetermined patterns. Border Crossing introduced one, and there's been 2 more since, and they each cost $3. I mean, I can think of worse ways to spend $3. Excuse me, sir, can I buy a thumbs up? Thank you. But not that many. There's also tailor packs. These include new costumes for your characters, but they come with the caveat that rather than building each of these suits to match the body shape of each heister, they kind of just use a generic male or female torso that gets a tiny bit of adjustment done to try to make it look like it matches the heister's default build. What this normally means is that the guys look fine, Bonnie is weirdly slim and not the drunk angry brick wall she normally is, and Sydney's fucking stanced. These packs are also $3, and again, there's definitely worse ways to blow that money, but both of these things you absolutely do not need. They're just not that well thought out, nor are they good, especially with the game having 6 of them presently. We've also got the Cartel Optics Pack, which is really just a vessel to sell a zero concealment loss optic for $3. And then there's the Federales bundle, which is just a bunch of strike clones of varying quality. The general consensus seems to be that the Bernetti auto pistol is the best of the bunch, but even the strike is still just a better option. And it's free. Sure, the Brunetti gets something like 1,600 rounds a minute with the right skill setup versus the 1364 of the Strike, but that one didn't cost me $3 dues. And the other pistols in the Federales pack just aren't good. Breakfast in Tijuana breaks the mold compared to previous missions, and what I mean by that is that it only makes sense provided you elect to have Vlad's brother-in-law crash through the front of San Martin, as he gets arrested trying to escape from the bank. Did you know that he has a name? Harudin was arrested just for smashing into the front of the bank and helping the clowns get into said bank, but this is where his past crimes begin to stack up. He's to blame for the cocaine blanketing DC like snow in 2014. He was complicit in moving kilos of coke through the Mall of America in 2016. Most of his crimes are cocaine related. But his ties to the Payday crew give them more than enough dirt to put him away for the rest of his life, and potentially the entire crew as well. So let's bust him out of the police station mid-interrogation. I will say that I like the map's design. It's compact, the enemies flow quite nicely, it's paced all right. If it had come out in 2015, it would be okay. But there are two problems with the mission, and the less egregious one is that it is light on loot. The evidence locker contains some mixed shelves with nothing like coke or gold to take, just assault rifles and the armory. So there's not a lot of loot, like 4 pieces or so, not a ton. I wish the evidence room had stuff like gold or coke, and it just doesn't. There's just nothing to steal for 90% of the mission. The second problem is that this mission was written by an idiot. So you fetch the evidence and decide to burn it. How do you do that? You bring it outside and find a can of gas, right? No, you track down a bottle of flammable liquid, you pile up the papers inside the building, and then you douse them in, I don't know, nail polish remover, I guess, and you set them ablaze inside, and guess what? The sprinklers go off, so you have to defend the water main, also on the second floor, like 20 feet from the fucking flames, and then once the evidence is destroyed, which takes forever, look, just shred it, rip it to pieces in your teeth, eat a page, line your jackets with the evidence, shuffle it out of order, and staple it back together. There's so many easier ways to destroy this stuff than a fire that takes literal minutes to destroy paper. Look, paper burns pretty quickly. Watch. I don't think that was supposed to happen. So, with that out of the way, we need to get into the jail, and we need a tool to pry the door open, located in the armory. What could it be? Perhaps a thermal drill or a saw, maybe some kind of breaching charge? Or it's just called the door breaker, and it breaks the door. In Stealth, you program an RFID tag to let you in, but here we just take this door breaker and bust in. Use bolt cutters and hard into that, chopping his hands off somehow, and then fetch his car keys and drive out of here. What? Fuck off. Breakfast in Tijuana is okay in terms of gameplay. I'd probably compare the combat to Hoxton Revenge with the way the mission is laid out and how enemies aren't really prone to congregating around in choke points. And the idea of breaking a character out of prison and bringing them back home is done in a way that actually makes me wish Hell's Island was this, instead of the borderline insane fever dream it actually was. But the actual mission logic doesn't feel like steps towards progress, it's like an accumulation of tasks. Honestly, make the evidence task set outside the building and a quick incidental, and then make the bulk of the heist centered around rescuing Harudin. And then, it'll be like 7 minutes shorter, but it'll at least make more sense. I wish there was a mission that both had a fun idea for a plotline and was a cool environment to shoot in. Wouldn't that be a delight, weird monkey hand I got from Goodwill? Why did your finger curl in? This mission also came with more gun colors and the Fugitive weapon pack, not to be confused with the Fugitive skill tree or any of the other Fugitive nonsense in this game. You've got a moderately good machine gun with the M60 that at least stops to savor the flavor of the ammo it chews, another mediocre 65 damage pistol, give it up, a stock that gives the M308 19 more fucking concealment, a direct upgrade of the Rattlesnake in all the worst ways, some weapon mods, and a whole lot of questions to ask yourself. So, how do you get people to buy new guns? It's a precarious task, all things considered. People already have their favorites, and you're gonna try to sell them an M60? Their HK21 and MG42 have worked fine for years. I've been on Team R93 for ages, and you ask me to put myself into a sniper rifle cage? So, I get it. The easiest way to get people to buy these packs is to make better versions of the guns they already have. But that also kind of just feels cheap. Like, I don't know, to try some new stuff? My monkey hand just curled in its second finger. Wonder what that could mean. November 2020 brings us Baluch's Mansion, the culmination of what Silk Road was leading to, I think. The mission is set during the events of White House Heist, and it sure plays out like if Shacklethorne and White House got up to some unspeakable things behind closed doors. Hey, look, I'm not gonna kink shame. They made a relatively competent mission together, which feels like a breath of fresh air to say. You have to breach Baluch's inner sanctum, kind of like Hoxton's Revenge or Hotline Miami Day 2 or Scarface Mansion, and to do that, the player's gotta solve one of two puzzles. Either you're gonna fiddle about with a shrine to some kind of deity, or you're solving a big puzzle wheel to access the man. This isn't even the biggest puzzle wheel this game has in a mission set in November 2018. While we're working, we're just gonna go ahead and slap this here button near Baluch's abused pet shark, and there he is. You can do whatever you want to him. You could shoot him, chuck a grenade at him, whack him with a bundle of money or a big golden spoon, and then he falls into the ocean. Here you speed up the mission a little by blasting him in the head again, or you wait for him to drown, or if you freed a shark, you watch it get its revenge. And then you just have to leave. By chopper. Don't do the default escape unless you hate fun. There is a ton of loot here, but you know what else this mission has a lot of? Frame drops. My first time playing this game, I was averaging something like 30 frames per second waiting for the chopper to arrive, which is unacceptable given that games with legitimate real-time ray tracing, this white whale of rendering tech, can perform better. But that may have been caused by OBS effectively just biting off more than it could chew and spitting out a corrupt 2-hour recording session on me having played these missions. So I had to play them again? Baluch's Mansion, even considering the abysmal performance, is probably the game's best mission since Shacklethorne, or maybe even Reservoir Dogs before that. The environment is spacious but with plenty of cover. The game's combat handles indoor areas way better than outdoor ones. The mission logic is fun, and there's a hefty amount of replayability given there's 2 separate puzzles to solve. The enemy spawns in the basement, kind of by like the piano and the library, are a little hectic. There are a lot of windows for cops to drop in from. But that's really my only nitpick. But the steps to get to this mission were hard to follow. They felt out of order. They didn't have a solid through line. We're not introduced to Baluch until 20 minutes before we blast him in the face. And as a result, the mission just lacks the punch of something like Hoxton Revenge or hell, even Hell's Island. That mission sucks to play, but its role in the story was a shocking one. A culmination of what Wordsmith's tenure of the game was building up to. If we were informed about Baluch from the beginning and the B-Team's goal was specifically to destroy his empire, then sure, they did it. But that isn't what happened. I need a moment to sum up my thoughts on the whole event, so we'll come back to this. Let's talk the Gunslinger pack. It includes a modern lever action, a trench gun, neat, and a Schofield, and all of these guns sit between 2 damage tiers for reasons I don't quite understand. What ends up happening is that everything feels like the awkward middle child. Like, the Schofield has damage between magnum pistols and revolvers, but the Bronco is stronger and reloads just as fast. The sniper rifle sits between the mag-fed semi-autos and the Rattlesnake, and loads a round at a time like the game's other repeater. But then you just have to ask why not run the repeater if that's what you're after, and you get some extra damage. Is it because the repeater sights suck? Yes, but I don't think that's a reason to buy this DLC, because another DLC blows. The Reinfeld 88 is the weirdest of the bunch, as it's created this new second highest damage tier that only it lives within. But even with Shotgun Impact Aced and Overkill active, it doesn't one-hit headshot kill on Mayhem despite its slow speed, just making it a worse version of the Mosconi, the GSPS, or the fucking Breaker shotgun. How do you let the Breaker outperform you? But this ends the Silk Road saga. Honestly, the prevailing emotion I felt throughout was just emptiness. It took nearly a full year to get going, with 2 uninspired missions and breakfast in Tijuana, but the heists did get better from there, culminating in a halfway decent heist, reminiscent of 2016 or 2017's missions. But in terms of scope, the fact that 2018 ended on the note of fighting off waves of Nephilim to get to one of the kings of Kataru and blasting his face clean in half with a rocket, and now we're just stealing cash again and popping a cartel guy in the chest is kind of underwhelming, even if the missions canonically take place before or during White House. The missions in Silk Road are almost invariably just made of pieces of other better missions. You could spend $5 on Border Crossing, or you could just play Election Day or Biker. You could purchase San Martin, or you could get the Big Bank for cheaper. It's even in the Legacy Collection, so you might already have it. The Luke's Mansion is Scarface Mansion or the Free Hoxton's Breakout in terms of mission structure, and Breakfast in Tijuana is the closest to a completely original mission the event had. But even then, I'd be remiss to explain that it's designed not unlike Hoxton Breakout Day 2, but with the exploring the space for resources to move on and the like. And I mean, it's not like stupid plots for stupid missions is new to Payday. So Breakfast in Tijuana doesn't even have that going for it. This game's had some dumb missions in the past before. White House Heist. There's a term, used a lot in television and coined by Leslie Stevens, the bottle show. Episodes of a TV series made on a very limited budget and on a time crunch, specifically to pad out that budget. If you have $2 million to make 10 episodes, you can nearly double that budget for your season finale by making one or more of your season's episodes maybe just a single shot, or at the very least limiting your cast and crew dramatically with an intentionally underscoped and cheap project. That's how all of Silk Road felt. It's produced cheaply, recombobulating elements from past missions into a slightly new format, making one mission's worth of new assets and just using them extensively throughout the next few heists. However, we know the truth as to what they were saving the money for. It was not to produce a big, bold, grand finale. To tell the truth, they already had their finale in 2018. Silk Road was meant to cover the costs of Overkill's The Walking Dead, the damage Bo Anderson did to Starbreeze, and recover the company from the brink of financial ruin. They were bordering on bankruptcy, but they were offered reconstruction by their banks, an opportunity to cut the fat and generate as much revenue as possible, to prove they could operate once the federal government took the training wheels back off. They had to extend it an unprecedented 3 times, but eventually they did generate the money they needed to cover operating costs, and all it took was releasing an extra $60 in downloadable content to 2.5% of the game's remaining player base. Again, it just feels like a relaunch makes more sense, a means to get older players back into the game. But if this makes money, then I guess it's fine. How much longer it'll be fine is entirely up in the air, and I can't say I like how it's going thus far. But it's done! Silk Road is over, and with that, Payday 2 is done as we know. Oh, fuck. I knew that was gonna happen. I kind of just assumed a denial would make it go. Can we bring back the H3VR stuff real quick? I just need to take a bit of a break. So pull that back, grab a new mag, retention reload. Yeah! This is the hot new way to reload a UMP.
Yeah, this is a primary in the secondary slot.
Rust lied. How much money does it cost?
You're gonna laugh at me. 58K.
What the?
It costs the same amount as the Mac 11.
What? Oh, it's an AK, but watch out! I'm giving this thing a 9 in style. Why isn't there an alcohol bootlegging mission? Even, like, I don't know, they could come up with a way to do it. They had one where you're tiny and on a table and cooking giant meth and fighting a giant spider. I have not played that mission, and for good reason.
I have played it too many times. I hate it.
I feel sorry for you.
That's okay, the music slapped.
You could just play the music on any other mission. There's nothing stopping you from playing Don't Act Dumb on the frickin' White House heist. There's nothing stopping you from playing Don't Act Dumb while fighting the flippin' Angels of Hell or whatever. They've come up with all these crazy scenarios. They can come up with a reason that you would have to bootleg alcohol, and then all you need to do... Border Crystal should have been that, because we already have enough meth jobs. Now it's like, oh yeah, add the barley, and then if you screw it up, your distillery just explodes. I want a bootlegging heist, and then I want to... I'm not gonna play it, but But, like, I don't know, it seems neat. And then you can attach an achievement like, oh, play it using only 1911s, Thompsons, and Mosconis. Alright. Where were we? Other than hell. Right, the Golden Dagger Triad is a Chinese crime syndicate operating in San Francisco. Are we in the past? Are we in the present day? Does it fucking matter? We're robbing them. Actually, I found out this mission is set during 2018. Still. So I can only assume this is shortly after White House heist, I guess? Maybe? The environment looks fine enough for a mid-7th gen game. It's just hard to believe that this mission came out only a year ago. Again, the sequence of events is a little ridiculous. We're stealing a dragon statue from the Golden Daggers for Zhu Feng, for reasons that are currently unknown. The basement is lavish, with a podium of some kind and a massive warehouse to rummage through. Rather than trying to pull the door up by its obvious handles, the solution is to use a forklift to raise the door. And then after that, the forklift is never used again. It actually catches fire, so you're not driving any more forklifts. The loot that's not the dragon statue is rigged with C4 that takes a whole 6 seconds to detonate. Compare that to the very short time window the Bombs and Rats Day 3 offered, and if you do manage to... So once you manage to defuse all of them, you use them to blow open a hole in the back to toss loot down, and then you just wait for your ride to arrive, and you escape. Dragon is... Oh, holy shit, it's been 5 years since Captain Winters appeared in a mission. Bye. Dragon is not that great. It's relatively short, padded out with overinflated timers to do anything, and the map's large straightaways make them perfect for being ambushed by an entire gang of SWAT camping at the other end of the street. Pair that with being as open as can be for sniper sightlines and the most practical street-level cover being on the wrong side of an invisible wall, and Dragon feels like a perfect summation of every design pitfall 2018 missions landed in. It came out 3 years after 2018. Prior to the Dragon mission, though, was the first of the Zhu Feng smuggler packs. It's only worth mentioning in that it added a 1911 to the game, which is neat, if the game hadn't launched with the 1911. Now, people get weird with me, the original Crosskill is technically a 1911 clone, to which I will retaliate by mentioning the Crosskill Chunky Compact is also a 1911 clone, technically chambered in 10mm according to its own slide. But regardless, I don't think anyone was clamoring for a second one of these, especially when the first one is already so gorgeous and pretty dang good, and given that the Magnum pistol tier is already pretty overcrowded. I mean, you have the Baby Deagle, the White Streak, the Mauser Trench Carbine, the full-size Deagle, the Luger, the 5.7. There's just so many of these guns stepping on each other's toes. We didn't need one more. And then right after Dragon was another smuggler pack. The Kang Arms X1 is the game's most stable sniper rifle, capable of almost hitting 100 when kitted out correctly. But aside from that, it's just another weak sniper rifle along the lines of the Contractor or the Grom, which are just better than the X1. There's also the Miyaka 10 Special, which is kind of just a micro Uzi, but a little slower and a little stronger, nothing really to worry about there. And then, oh boy. So, remember how the Scarface pack was delisted and how you can't get the little friend anymore? Well, there's a new underbarrel assault rifle. It's a battle rifle, not a DMR, with a pretty solid pickup rate and an underbarrel. This is what the little friend should have been all along, but you know what? Whatever. Sure. Fuck it. We have it now. It also comes stock with electric grenades, and it can't take the incendiary ones. Electric grenades work as follows. Take the taser from Golden Grin. Okay. Now make it AoE. That's it. This is a very confused pack in my opinion. Like, they took a few guns and just haphazardly paired them together, and the end result is you have a rifle that's co-opting a space a 2016 edition should have been in. You have a sniper rifle just doing what the Dragunov was doing, but not as good. And then you have an inferior version of the micro Uzi. And then the assault rifle has a gimmick that's paired to it with the electric grenades. We're about to see more gimmicks, aren't we? In June 2021, the second mission of the set was released, the Ukrainian Prisoner. This mission really makes it clear how few of the cast members from Payday's heyday are still around. I mean, I get it, depending on the circumstances, Hector, Bane, and the Dentist are dead, the Elephant's potentially actually immortal, potentially actually just a Democrat, and so Vlad and Locke are really the only two contacts who appear in these missions, pretty much since the end of 2019 even, and the new dialogue from returning characters is scarce. Vlad's a central part of this mission, and I don't think he has a single new line, truth be told. So remember Meltdown? It's Meltdown. Until the end, where instead of taking a car full of nukes to a train, you follow a forklift around to the other end of a dock and then just jump in a boat. It's not that bad, but it also makes you saw into a SWAT van while its turret is up, so more or less fuck this mission. So for helping orchestrate the theft of the dragon statue, the Triad kidnaps Vlad and beats him to a pulp. When you find him, he needs defibrillation, otherwise he will die, with an escape timer mid-mission. If it runs out, he's died, you goofed. If you save him, that timer disappears. So just walk around the corner, grab the defib, and then resuscitate him. It doesn't take 2 or 3 minutes. Why do we have a timer? And now, load him into the mover and just follow it through the dockyard to the end, taking the time to steal information on the Triad first. Which is not unlike us burning the evidence before we could even think of rescuing Harridan and Breakfast in Tijuana, which this mission shares a lot of its DNA with for some reason. The mission has a pretty healthy amount of loot, though. The biggest problem is carrying all that stuff over the long linear pathway to the dock where Zhu Feng arrives on his boat. You could probably throw it in the scoop. I don't think any of us threw that in the scoop. Oh, the mission crashed, and this was the only crash I had while recording all of this, so that's interesting. The mission's okay, but honestly, if you've played Hoxton Breakout and Meltdown, you've played this and you don't even know it. The only really unique parts are having to defib Vlad, saw into a turret van, and then one of the keypads uses Chinese symbols. That's it. If it's running in a lobby, it's not offensively bad, it's plenty playable, but also good luck finding anyone running it in a lobby. There was not a soul for a great long while. Knock knock, ding dong, did anyone ask for a third smuggler pack? No? Oh, fucking shoot, that's all I've got. The Rust 12 revolver is essentially just the 5.7, but as a revolver, and with it, it has some serious drawbacks. The biggest issue is its abysmal ammo economy, with 15 rounds in total and a pickup rate that requires several ammo boxes to get one bullet back. The Kang Arms pistol is pretty lousy, but it's got the one thing nobody asked for. It has an underbarrel shotgun akin to a judge you can deploy with the press of a button. 3 shells in total, but tremendous damage and available even for akimbo pistols. Which shotgun skills proc and which don't is entirely up in the air. I have no idea, the wiki has no idea. Oh, and there's a battle rifle with a DMR kit in there too. It feels an awful lot like these weapons are getting various perks and bonuses just to sell copies of the DLC, and while having underbarrel shotguns or armor-piercing revolvers would be neat, the only way to experience them is with this one-of-a-kind weapon in a $4 pack. And the weapon's not even that good. Now, I can think of many ways to spend $4.
Yeah, I'd like to buy a third joke for this video. Yeah, the rule of 3 special. I already got my first 2, I just need the third one. Yeah, I can hold.
But getting gimmick weapons that just aren't going to be well supported in the future in a game already doomed to die just doesn't seem worth it. Nobody's using the 5.7 as is. Why are they going to take effectively a worse 5.7? If you want an idea as to just how long it took to write this video, the next mission, Black Cat, came out after I started working on the script. Released October 13th, 2021, the mission is the game's second set on a yacht and the first to be playable in Loud. I was told this mission was lousy for performance, and given how bad Baluk's Mansion was, I was prepared for single digits or worse. It actually stayed a solid 75 frames per second on my monitor the entire time though, so I don't know, maybe it's just cursed. This is just Panic Room. I mean, there are a lot of Panic Room-like missions in this game. In Hotline Miami, you have to open up the Panic Room to fight the Commissar, ditto Hoxton Revenge. We have the genuine article available as well, and in that you grab some saws, saw a vault off of its steel supports, make it accessible for Bile to fly in and attach a big magnet, and then you escape. Simple. And in Black Cat, which is a different mission, you grab some saws, you saw a vault off of its steel supports, you make it accessible for Bile to fly in and attach a big magnet, and this is literally Panic Room. There's a couple of new additions, like having to open a safe for a code you may or may not need, or having to break open the security room in the casino and steal a guy's fucking hand, but that's about it. It's at least more tolerable than Golden Grin, even if the snipers on this map are a lot more of a hassle. Golden Grin is a fine mission, it's just big. And this is shorter and sweeter, with a very similar aesthetic. Also, this is the second heist in a row where we need to fight a goddamn turret to progress. Please give it up. Turrets are objectively the least fun enemy in this game, with boatloads of health, annoying phases to slog through, absurd DPS, and the ability to suppress your armor regen even if you're behind cover. And so many obnoxious countermeasures to contend with that it just starts feeling player hostile. I get it, it's an enemy in a game, but this is ridiculous. Surely there is a gap between a literal afterthought to fight and painful, agonizing excursion into the 10th circle of hell that we can explore. Please explore that. Please. One thing that's bothered me about the recent missions has been the music, and I do not mean this as a dig against Gustavo Coutinho. Browsing his Twitter and portfolio, he seems like a legitimately nice guy with very varied tastes and composition abilities. The problem is that modern Payday doesn't really give him a lot of chances to really get eclectic with his sound, so a lot of the tracks feel samey. But maybe I'm just spoiled. See, in 2022, I still feel compelled to give Simon Vicklin's tenure on Payday 2 high marks as one of my favorite FPS, or maybe even one of my favorite game soundtracks. I mean, the base game music is all, yeah, whatever, but man, the longer he stuck around, the more the game's world just grew and grew. To my knowledge, other than the Biting Elbows tracks and Alesso's Payday, the Hacks and Cloaks Mist is the first licensed track in the game. The other two get off scot-free because the former is a band made up of the people who'd go on to direct Hardcore Henry, and the latter only wrote the song as a tribute to what was then an underdog game, making GTA Online its whipping boy. Nearly everything else, from the blues number This Is Our Time to the Mall Muzak playing in Mall Crasher, to the live jazz of White Collar Crime, or the 60s pop song The Flames of Love, to the fucking opera in Ode to Greed, were written by Simon, and he got to experiment with a ton of genres. His heist tracks were often loud EDM, sure, but sometimes you got the bluesy funk of Mr. Purple, Trouble's Always Inbound, or Death Wish. Sometimes you got an 80s inspired riff like with Hot Pursuit or Break the Rules. Simon brought life and texture to the world of Payday both diegetically and otherwise, in a manner I have truly not seen in a game other than maybe BioShock Infinite. Normally when a game has this wide of a genre ocean to cross, it's because tracks are sampled or outright licensed, as is the case with Earthbound or Grand Theft Auto, respectively. But Simon just worked in all those genres, and made it work. Between Vickland and Coutinho, Carl Noren was a composer on the game, seemingly no relation to the Sugar Plum Fairy guitarist turned PE teacher. Noren was responsible for some of the game's most beloved EDM, Death Row and the venerable Don't Act Dumb, but only provided 6 tracks to the game, which for folks playing at home is only one off from the number of tracks La Castlevania provided. Gustavo has gotten some places to shine. Joke's on You is probably one of my favorite stealth tracks, but it often just feels like the music he's written is following in the footsteps of past Simon tracks, and Payback Roulette is honestly a great summation of that feeling. It's kinda just Dead Man's Hand again. Both are weird electro swing nonsense pieces playing when surrounded by opulence and luxury in a casino and a fancy yacht respectively, and it doesn't feel like the latter track is expanding upon what the past one did. It is just kind of doing that again. At best, I can say this track reminds me of the likes of Sonic Forces' classic Sonic soundtrack, but that's not really a glowing recommendation. It would be awesome to get to hear more of Coutinho's range, maybe something in a grand orchestral style, or a kind of light and spry piece like Running Man from Mafia Definitive Edition. I don't know. Let the guy use his full range, please. While I was grabbing the music for this video, while I was editing it, I learned that Coutinho actually got to make actual circus waltzes for the game's anniversary. This stuff's great. Why doesn't any of the mission music get to deviate from the EDM sound that Vickland kind of cornered, even though Vickland got to do so much more? That's kind of my frustration with this game's soundtrack. Coutinho is a fantastic composer, capable of very many styles, but it feels like they only really let him do one or two. Oh, and there's a new perk deck. I didn't see that until now. Oops. Leech, huh? Well, let's go to the wiki and find out how that works. Alright, that's template text. I see. I get it. Okay. What? Okay, I'm just gonna have to figure this out on my own. Honestly, the fact that the update history ends December 31st, 2020, and so many of the new items have just filler text on their wiki page says more than I ever could about the state of the community. What's a new player to expect when they can watch the quality of the articles drop between content from 2015, 2018, and then the borderline non-existent articles created in 2021? It does well and truly look like a ghost town game with that in mind. Okay, leech. Effectively, your health is broken into segments of 10%, and you can only lose one at a time and heal 4 of them as soon as you use it. If you kill 2 enemies, you get a second of invincibility and restore one of those segments. And every time you lose one, your teammates heal 5% of their health. You get a ton more health, and you can stay alive even if you run out of HP while leech is active. Even letting you trigger it during a bleed out, use a doctor bag in that 10-second time period, and actively cheat death should you desire. So a bunch of people realized that if you go stand in crossfire with a first aid kit at your feet, you can spend 1 kit to heal everyone instead of 4. You can use that momentary invincibility to launch grenades and rockets at the ground in front of you to hit max health in an instant, or you could just use it like a mini first aid kit, hitting the throwable key, healing 40%, hiding for 10 seconds, and then hitting it again when the timer resets. All of this said, this is just an overcomplicated version of Tag Team, which is an overcomplicated version of Gambler. It might have its use, but when the fandom doesn't even have the energy to document a year's worth of changes to the game on its own wiki, I don't know if a complexity complex is doing the game any favors. We need to take a step back and discuss something a little sensitive now. See, after Bo Anderson torched a company trying to become the Elon Musk of the metaverse, I'm very sorry about that wording, but try telling me I'm wrong, Michael Nurmark stepped in to fill the role. He had been with Starbreeze for over a decade, and he worked with Overkill following the recall of their Walking Dead game to try to find ways to save and earn money, making the decision to reignite the DLC furnace that kept Payday 2 churning in the mid-new tens. A story steeped in personal loss ends in October 2021, with Nurmark passing from cancer, age 50. While the game's quality has been debatable up to this point, there is no mistaking the fact that without Nurmark, Starbreeze would be dead in the water and all of these people would be without a job. An entire company with decades of legacy would have rolled over and died. An entire team left to fend for themselves and finding new jobs in a game dev scene fraught with money laundering schemes and ostensibly legal gambling amid a global pandemic. So, thank you, Nurmark, for not giving up on this team. Rest easy. That said, he had not been CEO since 2020. He stepped down from that role about a year before his passing, having been replaced by Tobias Sjogren, a former member of DICE who had penned the contract to get Koch Media to publish Payday 3, should that game ever actually come out. He was made the actual CEO shortly after that contract was finalized, and he's been in the role ever since. Happy New Year! At the start of 2022, Starbreeze added what they called exclusive sets. The idea is that this is a single mod that combines multiple mods in one, so instead of fetching a new barrel, foregrip, extension, and stock, you could just attach an exclusive set and be nearly complete with assembling a new gun. The stats are comparable to if you'd applied the individual pieces yourself, but have new unique appearances to boot. In a way, it's kind of like the legendaries from the safes. I went looking across the entire arsenal for how many exclusive sets Update 217 added. Yeah, sure. Beyond that, after 3,088 days since the game's launch, we finally got a proper crosshair, kind of. It's called a motion dot, the idea being it's a static UI element in the center of the screen to anchor your vision onto to prevent motion sickness. But let's not kid ourselves, you can use this like a crosshair should you desire. You might want a gun of 100 accuracy before you go using it for this purpose, but now I no longer need to press Q. I get its inclusion, but it's also just kind of weird to think that this game, really both games, went a full decade without adding a crosshair of some kind, but now there kind of is one. And now I know what I'm pointing at when I'm on the ground yelling for teammates. Perhaps the one most unanimously beloved feature is the game also finally got a bleed out counter along the name badges. You can now quickly at a glance see how many times you can go down before you're in custody, so there's no confusion as to when to use a doctor bag. There really wasn't any confusion if you knew to use one when you went black and white, but now there's zero confusion. I think this is one of the few things players actively clamored for over the years that made it in. Usually new mechanics and ideas are thrust upon players and they just have to adapt to it. So to get this is quite spectacular, really. Usually the game gets updates that go along the lines of, "Heisters, we got an email from the developers of Needy Streamer Overload and we took that as a sign to add Amachan weapon charms to the game. We don't know what's going on." Or, "Heisters, the Diamond Heist character voiced by Connor Shaw has been made taller, as Connor is tall, with 24,000 new polygons versus the old model. The game runs worse, I'm sorry." Or even, "Howdy, Heisters, new bulldozer." So getting something that players really wanted is honestly legitimately invigorating. there's just one teensy tiny little problem, and I don't know if you've noticed it. See, this is a thing people want in the game since like 2014. It helps solve the problem of new players chewing through a doctor bag, and now they know just how much longer they can hold out before healing. This was added 7 years after the first mass exodus from the game, and that is what we in the business call a little late. Knock knock, ding dong. That's right, there's another smuggler pack, and that's not a shotgun. You stole that from Titanfall 2, I think. That's a real gun? That's a real... Oh my god. The Argos 3 is an interesting piece of kit, isn't it? I mean, there's the Max 9 and the Magpul FMG in there too, and they've got some quirks. The pistol's suppressed, but it sends enemies flying on kill like a shotgun. But this bitch has a screen in it. A fucking screen. And you can equip 3 goddamn lasers at the press of a button. It loads 2 shells at a time, which would be cool, but the animation itself is pretty clunky to the point where reloading it from empty is faster than loading it when it still has shells in its chamber. Somehow... The general consensus seems to be that none of the 3 guns are all that good, and the 4 weapon colors seal the deal of suck quite succinctly. So, like 3 weeks ago, I was done. I had gone, yep, that's the video, let's get going. But then they went, Heisters, Mountain Master. So, the show must go on. The guy who brutalized Vlad, who then in turn stole from him in Black Cat, is a triad boss by the name of Yufu Wang. He's a hot-headed hacker who can break into our comms, something Locke made himself known for by doing initially. And Shayu wants him dead. Who is Shayu? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I literally have no fucking clue. Neither does the wiki. For Christ's sake, even Lucas has more of a biography. Did you know that this is a character in the game's world? He is canonically the smuggler Bane works with, more often than not, to move the coke and meth the crew finds or cooks in missions like Cook Off. He's only in the web series. Mountain Master is kind of just Hotline Miami Day 2, like almost verbatim. You climb a building to make it to the top, lure the boss out, and then you ice him. It does play out a bit differently, but not by a lot. The route upstairs involves brute forcing an elevator to the bottom floor, yeeting yourself up to the penthouse with a zip line, opening a secret hatch, then forcing open another door open so you can force another door open so you can finally force another door open, and well. Looks like Yufu's packing heat. Literally. He is the first NPC to wield a flamethrower, and comes clad in some serious decorative armor. He'd almost be imposing if he wasn't a boss fight in a Payday game. The heist doesn't run bad, it's decorated quite nicely, the layout's nice and open without being obnoxious thanks to the plethora of vents to scuttle through, even if they're clearly not hooked up to central air or any kind of ventilation, really. And all in all, it's almost a better framing frame. I mean, framing frame was one of the lesser launch missions, so that's not a very high bar to clear, but the fact that it cleared it is more than I can say for something like Border Crossing or Dragon. It also came with some pretty ugly cosmetics if you're into that sort of thing. The helmets are kind of neat, at least. And so ends the Golden Dagger Saga and the City of Gold campaign. The missions were fine, they're not awful, they're okay. The through line's a little easier to follow in this campaign versus Silk Road, but that still leaves us with the problem as to why these needed to exist in the first place. Before we can tackle that, though, I'm gonna need a moment, if you will. So this is the Nagant rifle. This was actually a sniper rifle I was like a big fan of when they added it, because you didn't have to put a big stupid scope on it, you could actually fire it from the irons. And the irons in the game were pretty good. It's missing something. It is the only gun in Payday 2 that you could attach a bayonet to. And then you have to use the weapon butt melee weapon, and then now it does slightly more damage, and that's it. I don't get it. Didn't this thing also have like a suppressor where they just like wrapped the barrel in cloth? I actually ran the Plains Rider unironically for a decently long time. Christ. But no, like this was a weird era for the game where all of the packs didn't feel like they needed to exist. And they were all like weirdly themed. It's like, oh, here's a cowboy one. Here's a ninja one. The ninja one didn't make sense. None of the guns like belonged together. And the only thing that kind of held some of them together was some of the weapons were poisoned. Like, that whole pack was just, I don't know.
Yeah, the ninja pack just kind of fell apart because there wasn't really any cohesion.
And then there was the barbecue pack, which was just, like, an excuse for them to put incendiary rounds in the game. It's very John Wick. Weapons in John Wick, especially John's guns, have a very particular look to them. Like, they're trying too hard to be cool, but they almost kind of wrap back around and become cool as a result. It's like the Shadow the Hedgehog of firearms.
That's an amazing way to put it, actually.
Like,
fantastic way of putting it.
Yeah, god damn it, you're trying way too hard to make me go, wow! But the fact that you went through all this trouble just makes me go, wow! So, I'll give it an 8. It's not really my cup of tea, but somebody likes it. This thing keeps appearing in video games. It's in Fortnite. It's neat that this has had this much, like, cultural staying power, given that John Wick 2 is only, like, what, 6 or 7 years old?
Yeah.
So, that's kind of neat. It shouldn't have had to come to this. The hatchet had long been buried. I'd moved on. We all did, I had thought. But it all weighs so heavily on my conscience. I had a chance to pull out long ago on this project, but I know the costs of my sins, and they lay bare before us today. Here's the thing. I'm not burning my integrity because I played Black Cat and Breakfast in Tijuana. That was curiosity. No, burning my integrity was because prior to recording all this, I went infamous. I unlocked a sound effect, big whoop, but I then proceeded to, over 9 hours, play through to level 100 all over again. And here's the thing, I really enjoyed it. If you're familiar with the poisoned Skittle Bowl hypothetical, the game's kind of that. Just imagine if all the red Skittles were the flavor of cherry cough syrup and 2/3 of the bowl was just red ones. If you don't know that, you're gonna suffer. If you do know that, you're cherry picking out the ones that you do know and trust, and you're enjoying them as such. Payday 2 has legitimately fantastic missions with real charm and polish, some killer pieces in its soundtrack, some great sound and occasionally even visual design for its generation and when in its element. Hotline Miami, Hoxton, Breakout, Big Bank, even First World Bank or Reservoir Dogs. The objectives are fun, the environments lend themselves to the game design superbly, and I was amazed at just how much these games had become muscle memory. This is the truly special part of the game. But it's such a small part of the game. There is so much garbage tacked onto this thing in ways that make me totally understand the work going into a sequel set for next year, probably the year after. The game's base is cluttered and bloated with a quantity over quality approach to game design. Rather than very nuanced and deep characters, Payday 2 has a ton, but most of them are one note and a majority of them are still spewing generic lines in lieu of calling out each other's names, like fresh acquaintances at a company party. Rather than a very select but robust arsenal, Payday 2 is packed with guns all in the same damage and performance class, but with obvious winners, usually the one with the best pickup rate or the most mods. Rather than outfits that are legitimately worth running over the default looks or complement a character's particular style, we get Boardroom Havoc, your prize for sludging through approximately 1,000 hours of just level grinding to hit Infamy 100, and it fits nobody's style and looks like if they added Patrick Bateman to Overwatch. And rather than having a couple dozen really legitimately fantastic missions, Payday 2 has nearly 70, a handful being mainstays, even a couple legitimate highlights of the genre, surrounded by a mountain of mediocre to poor quality missions simply not worth playing. Missions that be considered the mod scene's sloppy seconds in any other FPS. As much as I enjoyed the 9 hours it took me to hit that level cap again, despite me being able to put that time into a game with a proper legitimate campaign like Halo Reach, Bioshock, Half-Life 2 Episode 2, or What Remains of Edith Finch, I spent it playing missions I hadn't played in years, reliving that late high school halcyon of being home at 3 p.m. and having no further obligations, recording source code videos and playing the game with Alex, Dan, and Steve for the rest of the evening, chatting with Byron and Haley about our plans for college, hoping to be able to come back together with our bachelors in 4 years' time, having not missed a beat. Here I am, in 2022, having lost contact with so many, tearing my heart into the Steam inboxes of the few that remained, growing restlessly disgusted with the visage in the mirror and stuck in a life that spiraled out of my own control, leaving me suffering from whiplash amid the systemic twists, turns, and the vertical loop of endgame capitalism that I haven't been able to contend with anymore. In that regard, Hoxton Breakout for the 72nd time looks appealing. Running the Gallant rifle and GSPS 12 gauge for a laugh feels like a hot plastic tray of cheese blaster macaroni and a cup of Kool-Aid. And the kinship I felt for the rebellious punk who hates the system and wants to bend it to fit her idea of a just world just feels as fresh as the days I spent making builds for the entertainment of others. But God no if you expect me to do more videos on this game. Legitimately, the game has been stuck in stasis since 2018, getting some new facelifts and touch-ups, but nothing actually game-changing. I don't care about the meta anymore. Breakpoints are interesting and all, but they barely affect my life. I can just make a Garand go brrr, and that's enough to shred through the game at the difficulty that still feels the most balanced. And what do you expect me to say about the new guns that couldn't also be said about the predecessors? What do you expect me to say about a mountain of cosmetic bullshit that couldn't be said about rhubarb? Do you really care about how I went through playing this game because you're interested in my analysis and discussion of games as a whole? Or are you just looking to exploit my innocence and addiction to numbers all over again to get a scapegoat to chuck slurs at when you go down? New videos about this mess would be redundant because once again, it's not about the game as it stands before us now, but about the holistic journey the game took between its underdog story in 2013, the falling out it had with its own fandom in 2015 and 2016, to the desperation and eventual resignation it faced in just the past couple years. I knew playing this game would open a massive, horrible can of worms. I knew I shouldn't. It invites a troop I had wished to have separated from in 2019. But I feel like the ultimate message of the video was important. My interest in the game has lied for ages in seeing this former monolith contending with Grand Theft Auto and Battlefield lumber on through twists and turns, through slashed budgets and ill-conceived get-rich-quick schemes. Payday 2 is not the story of clowns taking on the rich and keeping to themselves. It's not a conspiracy thriller about a reincarnation machine built by fallen angels. Payday 2 is the story of Bo Anderson's hubris, his apathy towards the company he was made CEO of, focused unilaterally on growing his VR business and willing to let 3 games die to be his sacrificial lamb. One of them was recalled from sale, one of them has gone 4 years without an update, but one lingers on, a shell of its former self, all but forgotten by the millions of hands that have touched the title in the past 9 years. And with that, my interest in looking at skill sets and analyzing its characters and world have dwindled completely. My enthusiasm for weapon metas and perk decks has waned, and if I ever felt like the only way forward was to go back to Payday 2 like nothing had ever happened over the past 3 years, I would simply stop uploading. I'd end the channel and put the time I spend weekly into something more productive. I guess the comments are right. Just doing more build videos would be too easy a paycheck. I could resign myself to making videos for an incredibly niche and borderline toxic audience, who would no doubt misgender me for fun, but make an extra $100 a month or so. Or I could keep exploring the topics I'm legitimately interested in and push forward from there. I'm no stranger to the performative, invisible audience of the unseen performer. I spent nearly a decade uploading to YouTube on channels with under 100 subscribers. The checks are still coming in monthly now, and I don't mind the smaller audience because it's one I've personally loved cultivating over the years. It's an audience that respects my time and attention and loves seeing what I'm working on next. I would take a closer-knit, smaller community over a screaming mass of unknowable faces pulping me for usable content any day. And if you've liked this retrospective of the past couple years of Payday's life, I sincerely hope you'll join me going forward. But that brings us up to today. As of March 31st, we've played every single new mission and looked at every single new DLC, and my final verdict on the whole saga, Winds of Change and all, is that this all could have been avoided. We didn't need any of this. And there is one person to blame, really. One person who was pushed to the head of the table at Starbreeze for launching a middling Left 4 Dead derivative, brought all this tech he thought he might need to make a VR empire under his wing, got in talks with Dubai real estate and tech moguls, and was actively seeking the throne of Elon Musk of VR. Is it fair to throw Bo under the bus? What am I saying? It's always fair to throw Bo under the bus. Work weeks in excess of 100 hours, employees living at work listening to him show up and go, I played this cool game, can we add this? Every weekend, watching him take vacation time while you struggle to stay afloat. Now look, I'm not going to sit here and call Bo Anderson an asshole. I'm just going to let this fun video clip I found online do that for me.
Listen, I'm not gonna sit here and call Bo an asshole. I'm gonna stand up and do it over there. Bo is an asshole!
Overkill's The Walking Dead cost a lot of money. I don't think we know how much money, but it was a lot of money. The game reviewed poorly, sold worse, and Starbreeze nearly collapsed. And that's why we got the DLC. If everything had gone well and the project was managed by an actual project manager, it might have come out in 2017. I don't think it would have been great, but it would have been decent enough. And we'd probably be reviewing a third Payday by now, hot off the heels of a successful mobile adaptation, if that was the case. But no, here we are discussing lightning grenades in the Mosconi 12-gauge tactical and cross-kill chunky compact, not to be confused with the Mosconi 12-gauge and cross-kill. But maybe this isn't about me. At the time of writing, more people are playing this game than Red Dead Redemption 2, Halo Infinite, Left 4 Dead 2, Back 4 Blood, Forza Horizon 5. Hell, the only co-op PvE FPS ranked higher than Payday 2 on the Steam concurrent player list is maybe Destiny 2, but that's a game with a ton of other modes and activities. There's competitive shooters and survival sims ranked higher, yeah, but for mission-centric FPSs you can play with your friends. Payday 2, despite the player bleed, the ravaged public opinion, the failed games, and overall jank, is still king. Why might that be? Some games are as wide as an ocean and deep as a puddle. I feel like it's slung around as a derogatory term towards whatever trendy game there is to hate nowadays. I've heard people call Elden Ring that, but really the actual games that qualify for that title are few and far between. Did the Xbox 360 reboot of Alone in the Dark need a massive open world? No. Especially because it's only used in a couple short sequences or to pad out the runtime. On the other side of the spectrum, there are tiny games with a ton of depth, and they're some of the most beloved games on Steam. Ultrakill is short and boasts few weapons, but its movement and the interplay between its systems is so nuanced. You could still be learning how the game works years from now. With all due respect then, Payday 2 is kind of a shitty, flooded parking lot of a game. Sometimes you step in a puddle and it's just that, a puddle. Surely, Grinder is more complicated than if you damage an enemy you get health back, right? No. Surely the small nuances between weapon archetypes or the addition of night vision can expand the potential for tactical gameplay. No. Well, at least I need 3 other players. You aren't running around as a superpowered girl boss hitting Olympic-level sprints while carrying a light machine gun, shredding dozens of people with a simple pull of the trigger all on your own. No, that's the game. But then sometimes you step in a puddle and you just go sinking. The armor recovery being based on suppressive fire, the ebb and flow of enemy spawns should be these massive moments of depth and strategy, but for most players, it either doesn't work or you don't need to know how it works to enjoy the game. But if you want to get lost in the nuance, you surely can. It's an archaeological dig, going exploring for what pieces or Goldfarb's work, trying to take the tactical competitive nature of Battlefield and make it work in an FPS RPG hybrid back in 2013. You see the early vestiges of the post-505 Starbreeze trying to make it up to fans with hotly requested features and elements. You see the game's final breath, exhausted and trying to find unexplored territory. Half-baked or just incomplete ideas left, right, and center. And now we see the modern Starbreeze, finding a way to make checking off the IMFDB lists fun for players while hiding the shoestring budget. The charms, the weapon skins, the colors, putting on a garish and tacky suit and matching awful gloves, sticking a little keychain on your gun and just going to town on a mission that runs like ass. But with all your friends. Furthermore, you'd be hard-pressed to find a game of this type with this many weapons. Most FPSs invariably focus on one era's weapons. Black Ops focuses on the post-war, pre-modern era. Half-Life 2's arsenal is painfully Y2K. Battlefield 1, World War 1. So, having a game that combines the like of MG42s and Garens, MP5s and M14s, the Chris Vector running side by side alongside the original M60. There simply aren't that many games with this much variety in what they offer, even if Payday 2 isn't the deepest or most nuanced shooter of its kind. It would take an eternity to play all this game has to offer. Does it need 7 difficulties, over 100 guns, dozens and dozens of melee weapons, and this many characters? No, it doesn't. But at the same time, it's given the game a ton of lastability for people who stuck with it, or gave new players a mountain to explore, all while letting them feel like a badass in a way some games have just never dreamed were possible. Payday's white-collar clowns are some of the fastest FPS protagonists ever. They carry an arsenal, though 2 at a time, that would make the Doom guy blush. The crowds you fight, even when the game declares you between assault waves, only pales in comparison to the likes of World War Z, games that have seen Payday 2 rise and fall and took inspiration from its acceleration on the co-op FPS formula. I get why people still play it, and if you didn't check the dates on videos, you could easily assume I was still covering it if all you were recommended were old videos of mine. But at the same time, while I had fun looking back on the game and wouldn't mind playing it a bit more in my off time, I need my distance. I had a bad experience with this fandom right at the epicenter of a great amount of personal trauma, and I just want to heal and move on in solace, if you would be so kind as to understand. I made this video as the ultimate burying of the hatchet, but it doesn't mean I want to return to the place you call home. I'll have nothing else to say about the game once we're done here, even as we enter new events and as the game staggers its way through the next year and a half getting updates. I'll be all used up, and I hope that's okay. But also at the same time, the community that surrounds the videos now, it's not just way more manageable being a smaller community, but it's a much more positive one. The Discord server is collaborative. It's brought this group of people together to complete jokes and have conversations. The talent I get to be a part of, even on a micro level, astounds and delights me every time. My voice is in a Hat in Time mod.
And I kid you not, Hat Kid, he turns himself into a pickle. He's called Pickle Rick. It's the funniest shit I've ever seen.
When did that happen? I'm not getting broed by 15-year-olds on the internet who have no idea how to parse gender. There's a whole group of people here who have been incredibly supportive of me as a person that no amount of play buttons or AdSense revenue can replace. Yeah, these videos get more views, but I like the people watching these videos a whole lot more. If you liked this more methodical take on review and retrospective, welcome aboard. I have plenty of videos just like that I hope you'll enjoy. Did you like the wackier VR segments between chapters? There is plenty more where that came from. All that's changed is I don't need to be fixated on a singular game anymore, but the style of review and analysis has only improved. On one hand, I feel bad that my original refusal of the call of action was as harsh as it was, but at the same time, I don't feel it was unwarranted given everything I had gone through from Let's Talk About Payday 2 coming out to the Winds of Change announcement. If anything, I'm sorry I wasn't upfront about it and proclaimed it as loud as possible. I'm moving on. I was moving on. I'm sorry the algorithm had lied to you about the videos I still made, but I moved on. In the interim, I sincerely think I've made my best videos to date. Fallout in Analysis is far and away my best video. It's the Let's Talk About Payday 2 formula perfected, the culmination of my efforts as a critic, a writer, a game designer and analyst, an editor, and as someone who stopped worrying and learned to love the mod. If you liked Let's Talk About Payday 2 and care for Fallout or even just how companies treat their big IPs, I sincerely think you'll love Fallout in Analysis. If you liked Build Randomizer, you might like the H3VR tryout series I do with Dan. That's actually why the Payday 2 tryout has been spliced into this video, to let you taste the kinds of videos I've been making. It's part review, part retrospective, part analysis, and part unscripted. This is effectively a directory of my most common videos from 2020 to 2022, and I hope you'll find something enjoyable out of it. But even if Payday 2 had jumped immediately into new content after White House, how content creators that kept this game flowing and churning have been ultimately mistreated by the game's fandom and have become a revolving door of flash-in-the-pan creators with zany graphics and energy drink sponsorships who have picked up and dropped the game a million times is kind of not great. And a lot of it is the game's proposition as a mature rated FPS, I get it. But the amount of homophobic and transphobic rhetoric used against Connor Shaw is simply uncalled for. It was even then. This entitled behavior from so much of this fanbase, asking for specific build sites over others, calling the producers stupid for abandoning the game when they did, telling them to their face that you don't care about their opinions or interests. They were just a sink meant to dispense Payday 2 into your lap. I'm sorry. This fallout, though, was inevitable. Content creators won't stick around forever if you treat them like shit, and when entropy takes a fandom and it devolves into bickering discourse and just gives way to the right-wing quasi-fascist movement that's been bubbling online for decades, it just drives people away. It doesn't build a lasting community of anything but assholes, and how you treat those YouTube and Twitch people reflects throughout the entire game. And eventually, under 5% of players play content that's now over 2 years old. The only thing in my mind that could re-spark general interest in the game is a complete refresh. Clean up the game's assets and improve performance on its maps, consolidate the bloated user experience into something more svelte and understandable. Give the game's menus and UI a cleanup, make them easier to navigate and understand. Hit fans with a new mission that captured what they loved about the game in 2013 or 2014. Put together some kind of catch-up series or menu button to highlight any big new changes over the years. And then relaunch the game with the intention of getting older players to try it once more. Because presently, the game is jaded, toxic, old blood, pushed against new, rather young players who don't know any better and don't know what's going on. And things are just going to keep getting worse. And so, dear viewer, thank you for listening to me speak my piece. It does mean a lot to me, but I do need your help. Here is my deal. I'm not covering this game anymore, but I did actually enjoy some amount of playing it again. I began writing this video when Back 4 Blood came out because, I don't know, it reawoke this weird itch in the back of my head, and I figured it had been long enough that there were elements worth talking about. Even if there's not that much, although this is a very long video, so maybe there was? I don't know. The people who did leave the channel behind once upon a time, I hope this inspired you to come back and check out what you've missed. I still cover FPSs, I still review and analyze games, my personal and the greater socioeconomic connections they have, and I still futz around at unscripted stuff with Dan. Give him a shot, please. But also help moderate your fandom spaces and stomp out aggressive rhetoric. And then we can leave things on this bittersweet, but not bitter, note all over again. If this was somehow the first video of mine you've seen, hi, I'm pleased to meet you. I'm Jason Claire Riddick. I've been online since 2009, on YouTube since 2011, and I've covered a great many games on this channel. Please consider checking them out if you could. And if you've been around this block one too many times before, then thank you dearly for sticking around. It does mean a lot to me. You all are the reason I keep pushing forward despite views bottoming out to the point where 300 views in a few days is a video doing good. And if you're simply passing by, then take my final message with you. Let's keep fan spaces something worth coming back to time and time again. No matter the game, no matter the age rating or genre. Speak up for and defend those marginalized in these spaces. Listen to queer voices, people of color, and if they're uncomfortable with the harassment or intolerance they're facing on a server, speak up. If someone's being bigoted, tell them to shut up or just tell them to cool it. Check into if you can start a vote kick. Moderate these spaces collectively. Games, YouTube comments, Reddit and Twitter spaces, the works. Let's keep fan spaces and online spaces inclusive and positive, and reject the vitriol and hate you see. It's common, but it doesn't have to be. The world is cruel, but we hold the keys to make it a nicer, more positive place. Let's make it one, for everyone's sake. Thank you.
I haven't settled on a meaning of what it is that defines me. But if you're riding on a tidal wave, it's hard to think when you're trying to float. I got a feeling in a long workout, I'm on the right track, there's no going back. How unusual, something's changing in spite of me. All I've never known, we piece together in front of me. I got a feeling in a long workout. 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 I put myself in a little box. It's got a window and a breathing hole. And when it rains, I go for a swim. I might get out if it reaches the top. I got a feeling in a long workout. I'm on the right track, there's no going back. How unusual, something's changing in spite of me. got a feeling it'll all work out. I got a feeling it'll all work out. I'm not the crash on the side of the road. I'm not the people who define me. I'm not the reason for the hole in your ground. You set the scene and it surprised you. I got a feeling it'll all work out. I'm on the right track. There's no going back with all the right words from all the wrong days, from all the old ways. A handful of change to spend on myself to play a new game.
All right, I think that'll do for the video. When is this coming out? Not this Thursday. It's coming out Friday, April 1st. That is April Fool's, isn't it? What a crazy joke! Like Payday. There's no Payday 2. What ridiculous?